After recording Sally's story, we stayed on the line and continued to talk about our journeys. And one thing that came up was all this terminology around mind body healing and how many different ways people are discussing it, and how at the beginning that can be fairly confusing. So I wanted to share with you what came out of that discussion because I think it was fairly helpful. We not only discussed the terminology, but we went into several different aspects about Dr. John Sarno and how this mind body healing of chronic pain started as him being the pioneer. I want to be clear the concept of mind body healing or a holistic approach to healthcare that came ages ago, talking back to Hippocrates' age from around, what is that, 400 BC, something like that. He was the father of medicine. He was talking already back then, BC, about the healing properties that we all have within us. Or if you go back 5,000 years to traditional Chinese medicine, they had the concept already. It's not just about healing the body, it's about healing the mind, body, and spirit together, and the energies that work within the body and the meridians and all that. What I'm talking about here is Dr. Sarno's pioneer and revolutionary research that he was doing around this mind body approach to healing chronic pain. That also touches on something that I said within this discussion with Sally, that 50% of his patients had pain and 50 didn't. I was using that as a generalization. That is not the correct statistic. I don't know what the percentage split was between what his patients presented with pain versus not. This was from the studies that he had done. That number was just a generalization. I shouldn't have put a number to it. In this, we also touch on nervous system dysregulation, the mind-body connection, boundaries, the fear-pain cycle, and brain retraining. So there's a few different topics that we delve into. Bottom line is there are many ways that people are discussing this topic of mind body healing, and pick and choose what sounds right for you and the terminology that works for you. I go into a couple of the words that I steer away from, and that's a personal preference, but it doesn't mean that those terminology, it's not wrong or right. It's just certain people have taken this work now and started to make it their own and have different terminologies around it. They're talking about the same type of healing. I hope you enjoy the episode and that it does bring some clarity to you. One thing that has been confusing along this path that I want to clarify for other people that are just starting out is the names that people call this. I first heard it as TMS, tension myositis syndrome. And that is from Dr. John Sarno, and would you call him the godfather of mind body healing kind of thing? He's the one who kind of started it. He was seeing a lot of patients with back pain, and the MRIs were coming back. They all looked the same basically on the MRIs, but half of them were complaining of pain and half of them weren't. And so he was trying to do some research on why that would be, why certain people would feel pain versus other people not. And that's kind of how this was all born. And then they did studies on it. So I came into it hearing about TMS. Everybody's talking about TMS. But then at some point I heard it was the mind body connection. Even when they're talking about TMS, they're talking about the mind body connection, which is your mind having thoughts that then create feelings and emotions that then can be felt within the physical body. And so within the body, it shows up as headaches, migraines, back pain, fibromyalgia, stomach aches, all kinds of different ways. So that part made sense. Mind body connection. There's a connection between my mind and my body, this constant loop of information going back and forth. That part makes sense. Then I've heard also mind body syndrome. The migraine is a mind body syndrome or a mind body condition, which would be something that comes out of the mind body connection going haywire. Basically, the nervous system gets dysregulated and sends the brain messages of danger or a threat is coming. And so this happens. So what's your journey been? I'm just curious what your thoughts are on that.
I call it TMS, which I love Nicole Sacks's analogy of the beaker inside you or like a cup inside you. And every time you have a bad experience or someone makes you feel a certain way or you put yourself down or anything negative, any emotion that you feel that you suppress gets dumped into this. And as the years go on, the cup gets fuller and fuller And then when it gets to its full capacity, it sort of spills over the edge. And then the spilling over the edge is going into your body in whatever syndrome or condition that it manifests itself in. Migraines enough. That makes a lot of sense to me. So that's why by doing this work of nervous system regulation, it's almost like pouring a little bit out of the cup. And by being a bit kinder to yourself, you're not putting yourself down, you're not filling the cup, if that makes sense. So I do call it TMS, but I know when I first started listening to Dan Buglio, he calls it PDP, or brain perceiving danger. So the brain's getting a danger signal from somewhere and the brain doesn't like something that's going on. There's so many different words and names out.
Perceived danger response.
Perceived danger. Hey, PDP.
I see something else on his stuff that says MindBody Syndrome.
Yeah. But most of the time it's PDP.
Dr. Howard Schubner has another one. So his is Psychophysiological Disorders. That, to me, I really am sensitive about words because I know what they do in your brain, even on a subconscious level, now that I've learned about all this, subconscious brain, neural pathways, blah, blah, blah. And to hear that I have a disorder, I don't want that word anywhere near my brain. You know what I mean? Like disease, migraine disorder. I know that insurance companies and pharmaceutical companies and physicians, they have to label it in some way because then it gets into the insurance and it's labeled right in the code. And then you're either reimbursed or not for medications, et cetera. I come from pharma. I understand how that works and why that's the case and why, I won't get into why pharma wants it to be labeled as such and different things. But to me, that word gave me a life sentence. If I have a disease, migraine disease, or I have migraine disorder, or even a syndrome, I don't really like that word, to be honest. I don't really want to be using that word. It just feels like it's a life sentence.
Whereas that's why I like TMS. It's just
the TMS I just think is very hard to understand that one too. Attention myositis syndrome. What? Also, that has syndrome. I didn't realize that. Mind-body condition is what I've landed on only because condition feels to me as something temporary. I have a condition that may or may not be there tomorrow. But a disease, I'm stuck with that disease. Or a disorder, I'm like super damaged. I don't know. It hits different. This is me. Other people might be. I probably will use the word TMS in regard to mind-body condition. It's used so often. Well, it's also this is the other thing. I'm glad that you said that because if you Google TMS, it doesn't come up as attention myositis syndrome. If you do TMS, Dr. John Sarno, maybe it would come up. Well, probably for sure it would. But in general, it's something else. That's also why I was trying to make sure it was clear that it was mind body. And because I don't know, I just feel like that part, my body connection is super understandable. Yeah. You have thoughts and emotions that show up in your body. And everybody knows somebody that, or we've experienced it ourselves, that we've had a stomach ache because we've been nervous about something, or we feel heartache when we have loss. It's very understandable. I mean, I say that I didn't make the connection to migraine and how that could be a mind-body condition. That took me a while to think, oh, actually, all this stress that I knew the stress that I was under and the pressure that I was putting on myself wasn't good. I knew that it was making me feel anxious or frantic, but I didn't realize how that could be causing the migraine.
No, I just thought it was normal to put yourself under pressure. And I didn't think it was a thing to be nice to ourselves at all. I didn't.
Yeah, self-care sometimes has been perceived as being selfish. I think the messaging through society and as we were kids were, you should be nice, you should be helpful. And the minute you were consumed with yourself, it was like, oh, you're selfish so the messages over the years, I think that we've gotten have perpetuated that kind of a problem. At some point I heard this concept of you put the oxygen mask on before you can assist others. And this whole concept of you have to help yourself or you can't be of service to anybody else because you're so worn out and exhausted.
Well, like the concept of boundaries, putting everyone's needs before your own, and then just putting yourself last all the time has a knock-on effect eventually. The whole being a martyr, just keep do, and doing, and just achieve getting things done. It does come at the detriment of your well-being, basically. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. So I guess just to wrap that part of the discussion up is that there are many, many ways that people are calling this type of work. Mind body healing, I've also heard it be discussed as, or self healers. There's so many different ways to say it. But so tension myositis syndrome, or TMS, this is kind of where it started with Dr. Sarno. Then it's branched out in the people that have carried on his work, either calling it TMS or mind body condition, mind body syndrome, perceived danger pain,
Don't they
sociological.
call it psychosomatic something?
Yeah, that's another one. Yeah. And that one, see, I thought we were getting away from, that's why I was confused with Dr. Schubner calling it psychophysiological disorder, because I thought at some point I heard from psychosomatic that people weren't understanding that psycho is just mind, somatic is body. It's mind body. Psychosomatic only means mind body, actually. But the word psycho doesn't resonate with people. Usually they think, I don't want to be psycho. I think it's a good word in vocabulary. So yeah, I'm a little bit surprised that or I had read at one point that those type of words were being replaced with mind body to make it more clear and for a wider audience to embrace it, I guess you'd say.
I mean, there's so many different approaches and so many different practitioners, and it's about just finding something that resonates with you. We could throw a million different names out there, and some might resonate with us, some not so much. They're all coming from the same place. And if you have a dysregulated nervous system, it's usually the reason for your pain. What it means, isn't it?
Yeah. 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 I think it's just important to mention all this because this caused me confusion at first because everybody was talking about it slightly in a different way, but yet they seem to have the same messaging of, like you said, our thoughts creating a reaction within the body and then the nervous system getting dysregulated, sending danger signals to the brain. Then the brain triggers the pain.
And then fear perpetuates it. Fear of it coming again. And your brain is trying to protect you from all those feelings, isn't it?
Yeah, this pain fear cycle, because you really can't, once you get into the pain, you can't not have the fear a little bit, but then the fear is perpetuating the pain. And so it's like, yeah, it's this vicious cycle that we get into.
How
So
can
really
you
you
not
have
be
to-
scared of something that's happening time and time again? And at the time, you don't realize that the fear is keeping the pain going at all. Once you understand that the messages to the brain of fear is keeping the cycle going, you can begin to unlearn those pathways in that, what do you call it?
Brain retraining, exactly what you're saying, that you learn to stop the fear or recognize the fear. The awareness then starts you to be able to go down a different path where you.
I suppose at some point we should mention the neural pathways. That's what it is, and it's learned behavior. There's so many ways of explaining it. It's so hard.
I think there should be a whole other episode on neural pathways and how the brain works and the fact that the pain comes from the brain. And yeah, it's a complex topic for sure.
You were telling me.
This is my career. I'm going to try to explain it. Like I can.
Yeah, could you pick something easier?
Exactly. It's fascinating to me, though. To wrap this up, if you're interested to see how things are spelled, etc., you can head over to the YouTube video. Mind body medicine is overarching all of this mind body healing, TMS, and all that we've been talking about. That is the scientific understanding that there's this intricate and inseparable link between the mind and the body, and how our emotions and our spirituality, our behavioral factors, everything can directly affect health. But most importantly, to our situation, is it explores the body's innate ability to heal itself when given a positive physical and emotional environment. And that's what we're exploring here on this channel. But you'll hear it said in other ways also. You may hear of integrative medicine or holistic medicine, psychosomatic medicine. And again, what we said in this episode was psycho is simply meaning mind and somatic means body. So it's really mind body medicine essentially with that as well. Behavioral medicine, that gets into a little bit more of how the impact of health on the behavior of your psychosocial, so your social environment, your work environment, your home environment, etc., and how that affects your health. Complementary and alternative medicines, that's broader, but factors in also to this mind-body connection. And functional medicine as well overlaps with this. So just to be aware of that. Talking about terminology, I thought I would throw this in as well, is you see mind-body written in several ways. I have an Instagram post on this that I'll share on the YouTube video. The correct way is a hyphen in between mind body. That's grammatically correct. It makes a compound adjective out of the two words and makes it into a single concept. People who are writing it in two separate words, mind, body, it's grammatically incorrect, but it also goes in direct opposition of what we're trying to convey here with separating out the mind from the body. So I don't like to see it written that way. What I've incorporated for migraine oasis is smushing it together and having mind body be one word. I do capitalize B to recognize that mind and body are together. It's actually not grammatically correct to me. It's a visual reminder that the two are linked. There is no separation between the mind and body. That's why I don't like the hyphen, even though it's grammatically correct. I am starting a movement. I want it to be smushed together. So this is why you see me write it in that way. I'm sorry if that drives you crazy because it's not technically grammatically correct, but that is why you'll see me do it that way. Tension myositis syndrome, TMS, is also called tension myoneural syndrome. Myositis means inflammation of muscles, and myoneural means it's relating to or connecting muscle and nerve. Then we talk about the migraine connection, and what comes out of that is either a mind-body syndrome, a mind-body disorder, or a mind-body condition. We also talked about perceived danger pain. You'll see that as PDP, psychosomatic, which again, mind, body, psychosomatic, or PPD, and that's the physiological disorder. And again, psychophysiological, physiologic is body, psycho, mind. So this is, again, we're all saying the same thing in these terms. The terms that Migraine Oasis has adopted is mind-body medicine, mind-body healing approach. You'll hear me talk about a holistic health approach because that is a little bit more broad and incorporates more factors that I think are important to our overall health and the tension that is felt within the body. There's 8 pillars that I use of our holistic health. You will hear me talking about that a bit as well. Mind body connection, and I call it a mind body condition for the reasons why you heard in the video. I will sprinkle in TMS only because it is so well known in this field and people are searching for it under that name. I'll always combine it with mind body condition. If you want to continue the conversation, please check us out at Facebook under the private group for Migraine Oasis. We're on Instagram and YouTube and podcast. Please stop by and say hello and let's continue the conversation. Have a good day. See you in the next video.